Kyle is Famous by John Zemansky. Kyle wakes up. He is famous. Kyle is host of the most popular talk show in recent memory, Stay Up Late with Kyle. Stay Up Late with Kyle has grown in popularity quickly in the last year, and the public has noticed. Inside has called Kyle a most excellent dumpy white man. Top Tech noted that Kyle is inspiring youth to explore STEM fields. Most other talk shows are dedicated to discussing Kyle and his personal details. Most online videos are best of clips taken from Kyle's latest broadcast. The eye upon the world is upon Kyle. Tonight is Kyle's most important guest interview yet. Stay Up Late with Kyle will be featuring Rachel May. She is a kind and lovely philanthropist. She is dear to the hearts of many. This interview requires preparation H. Kyle cracked his eyes open, knowing today is his last chance to prepare for the interview. Kyle has 30 hours left. He must choose his actions wisely. Kyle's first decision of the morning was made wisely. Which one do you want?
Which one do you want?
Embrace the Christmas spirit. As Kyle started to leave his bed, something stopped him. Maybe it was a smell in the air. Maybe it was the chill from outside, or maybe it was just pure luck. Kyle had been imbued with the spirit of Christmas. In an instant, Kyle began to hear the dreams and wishes of every child in the world, all at once. Kyle's newfound abilities were quite overwhelming. He clutched his head and screamed loudly. The voices did not stop. Kyle curled into a small ball and rocked back and forth. Not to be left alone, Kyle was gifted with a Christmas miracle. Small bumps began forming under his skin, pushing outwards. Kyle's skin began to stretch and tear, letting loose a small army of elves that had been growing in his stomach. Makes Shippo proud. The elves scattered around Kyle's apartment, foraging for anything remotely nutritious to feed upon. Kyle birthed an elf army. He had been chosen to become Santa Claus. Kyle decided the best course of action was to fulfill his duties as Santa Claus. Kyle stepped out of bed, stray elves falling from various holes in his skin. Yeah. Kyle must now continue his day as Santa Claus. Start day. Kyle exited his bed and took a quick glance around his bedroom. Open closet. Kyle opened the closet. It was dark and he could only really see his hanging shirts. Choose an outfit. Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is. Santa suit. Kyle properly chose to dress as Santa who he was. Back to room. Sit at desk. Kyle made his way over to his desk and sat down. Create Santa's list. Kyle knew he must construct his naughty and nice list. He began to think of all the people in his life. Kyle thought of Gabby. Naughty. Gabby crashed through Kyle's floor and began punching in the face repeatedly. After a few minutes, she left through his bedroom door. Kyle thought of Rachel. Nice. Kyle thought of Techno Jim. Who's Techno Jim?
In one of the endings, he decides to interview a cardboard cutout.
Oh, he's nice. Kyle thought of Kyle. Naughty. Kyle ripped his list out of his notebook. Back to desk.
First time I did that, I thought that Kyle was just upset that I made him naughty and he did that.
Write notes for interview. Am I a mother? Is your mother a mother? Are you a mother? Am I a mother? Yeah. What are some diet tips? Beef, mashed, or blended? Ever eaten a raw egg whole? That one. What's your funniest story? Do you ever smile? I purposely ran over a puppy. Okay. What's your guilty pleasure? Do you feel guilty? Are you guilty? Okay. Kyle ripped his page of notes out of the notebook and got up from the desk. Kyle made his way over to his desk and sat down. Back to room.
Are you guilty?
Scavenge. Kyle quickly crouched down on the floor, realizing his immediate need for elves. Kyle winced as he realized he would probably need to bring some elves along. Kyle grabbed a nearby bag. He started to crawl around fiercely, grabbing elves left and right. Make Shippo proud. Soon Kyle's bag was mostly full of elves.
Are you satisfied with the amount of elves?
Yeah, that's good. Return to the center. Let's get out to the hallway. Move to kitchen. Make Christmas movie. Cookies. Kyle hurried to the set. Okay, never mind.
Fine.
Sitting across from his host chair was a glamorous woman with an air of genuity. As Kyle approached her, Rachel looked up and smiled. Good evening, Kyle, she said, looking him in the eyes. I've been looking forward to being here. Dump elves on Rachel. Well, we know that ends it, because she has an allergic reaction to elves.
No, they don't know. Could do it just to have like something there. Or do you want to get another ending?
We'll do that in a second. Kyle responded, scream and spin in circles. Answer polite. Scream and spin in circles. Kyle started to stretch out his arms wide, tilted his neck upwards, and was interrupted by his professor telling him and Rachel that it was time to start the show. A moment after seating, the studio lights brightened and the cameras clicked on.
Action.
Start broadcast. Good evening, everyone, said Kyle, looking at the camera. Welcome back to Stay Up Late with Kyle. Explain that you're Santa. Or introduce Rachel.
Start the show or start by telling everyone that you're Santa Claus.
Kyle continued, I am your host, Santa Claus. I am here to bring you Christmas cheer. Kyle put his notes down and looked at Rachel. Ah, ha, ha, said Rachel, not understanding. It's not something to joke about, Rachel, said Kyle. I take being Santa very seriously. And I take you very seriously, Kyle, said Rachel, trying to play along. I am not Kyle, said Kyle. I am Santa Claus. Produce present or more.
You want to give her a present? Proof you're Santa or just something else?
In an effort to convince Rachel of his Santa nature, Kyle hacked a present out of his mouth into his left hand. Okay. Kyle pushed a soggy present into Rachel's lap. Rachel looked slightly unsettled, but reached her hand to undo the bow on the top. Shh, said Kyle, slamming his hand on top of Rachel's. You can't open it until Christmas. Rachel decided to play along. I'm sorry, Santa, said Rachel. Do you happen to have your naughty and nice list with you? I want to know where I stand. Yeah, I do, said Kyle, pulling out his list. You're on the nice list. Well, thank you, Santa, said Rachel. What a nice surprise. Kyle was suspicious. Is it a surprise? He asked, raising his eyebrows. Rachel coughed. Oh, of course it isn't. I'm nice. Always on the nice list. Okay, so if that's the case, I want to try something, said Kyle. So if I put you on the naughty list, will you turn into a bad person? Like, can I control your morality? Before Rachel could answer, Kyle crossed her off on the nice list and added her name to the naughty list. Immediately, something changed. Rachel jumped out of her seat in a blind rage and began trashing the studio, laughing horribly. Kyle, suddenly curious, began adding other names of people he knew to the naughty list. Friends, family, and acquaintances of Kyle began bursting through the walls, ceiling, and floor, fire in their eyes. It did not take long for the studio to fall into complete ruins. Kyle was fascinated by the results of his actions. Kyle wrote a dissertation on the effects of Santa on adults and was published in many psych journals. As research branched off of Kyle's findings, Kyle began to be known as much for his scientific findings as his talk show. Somehow, Kyle had become extra famous. Kyle was extra famous. Alright. Wither away in your bed.
There is a certain number of normal decisions. Like, the basically has a certain number of endings, and then Christmas has a certain number of endings.
Oh. Kyle decided to stay put and wither away. Kyle withered successfully and died. Shucks. Kyle is now a ghost. This does not relieve him of his responsibilities. Get out of bed anyway.
You died, but you still have responsibilities.
Well, okay, fine. Kyle walked into the small hallway that connects the rooms of his apartment together. Leave apartment. Kyle walked out into the middle of the road and took a long, pondering look around him.
One thing to remember, you're naked. You never got dressed.
Oh, crap. Visit tech store. Kyle walked into the clean, white tech store. He was greeted by Techno Jim, an elaborate cutout mascot with flashing lights. Ask attendant for free sample. Steal Techno Jim. Quickly, before the attendant could acknowledge him, Kyle grabbed Techno Jim by the shoulders. Finding that Techno Jim's cardboard feet were bolted to the ground, Kyle started to pull upwards forcefully. After several tugs, Techno Jim broke free, leaving one foot and one leg behind. Kyle glanced at the attendant, who was staring bewildered, and ran outside. Continue with the day. Kyle walked out into the middle of the road and took a long, pondering look around him. Visit downstairs neighbor. Kyle approached his downstairs neighbor door and knocked. A middle-aged woman named Gabby answered the door. She looked at Kyle expectantly. Bah. Greet and start conversation. Good morning, neighbor, said Kyle cheerfully. Gabby looked at Kyle expectantly. Ask Gabby about Gabby. That takes an hour. Gabby, asked Kyle. Tell me about yourself. Gabby stiffened. Oh, you know, she said, putting on a fake smile. I just sit around here. Yes, I don't get around much. Never go out at night. I just stay here, right here. Gabby glared at Kyle. Convinced by Gabby's statement, Kyle bid her goodbye and returned to the street. Returned to apartment with 10 hours left. Move to kitchen. Kyle walked to the center of the kitchen. Open fridge. Kyle opened the fridge, intending to find something to eat. Eat crust on fridge wall. Eat the fridge. Prepare breakfast. Eat condiments. Eat fridge. Kyle pointed his neck directly upwards and hoisted the fridge on top of his face. Somehow, miraculously, he wrapped his mouth around the device. He started to swallow. In one slow, horrible movement, the fridge slid Kyle's throat. After many gurgles and snaps, Kyle felt relatively sure the fridge could not come back out. Back to kitchen. Check pantry. Kyle wanted to access the pantry, but found it was locked with a small keyhole. Well, I guess we're done. Kyle hurried to the set. Per normal, he ceased to be a ghost before he arrived. Sitting across from his host chair was a Oh, the ghost thing doesn't last.
Yeah, you become normal beforehand. as normal.
Sitting across from his host chair was a glamorous woman with an air of genuinity. As Kyle approached her, Rachel looked up and smiled. Approach Rachel. Rachel's smile quickly turned to shock as she realized Kyle had not put on clothes that day. Kyle waved and smiled broadly. Rachel uncomfortably averted her eyes. Kyle started making his rounds around the room, greeting each crew member, none of whom looked at him directly. As it became apparent that Kyle had no intention of leaving, Rachel made some excuses and exited the set. One by one, the crew followed suit. Kyle was left all alone. Kyle prepared by being a nudist. So always get clothes, huh?
Yeah, if you don't wear clothes, you just get that ending.
Jeez. Exit the bed. Yeah, you better go for a closet, I guess. Kyle decided to take some time to choose the perfect outfit, knowing how important appearance is. Skunk pasties, jeans and swimming goggles, suit of armor, slick suit. Suit of armor. Kyle was unsure what exactly caused him to decide to wear his armor, but it felt like the right thing to do. After much squeezing and sweating, Kyle managed to wrap the metal suit around his dumpy self. Kyle returned to the center of the bedroom. Scavenge? Kyle quickly crouched down before realizing his immediate need for bugs or gossip. Bugs. Kyle started to pick between the fuzz of his bedroom carpet, hoping to catch a stray beetle or two. Soon he had a small handful of various insects, dead and alive. Save for later use. Kyle stashed the wriggling mass for later use. Kyle returned to the center of the bedroom. Small key, assorted change. Ask Gabby about Rachel. Gabby, Kyle asked, what are your true thoughts about Rachel May? Oh, Rachel? Gabby said, she's a wonderful woman. Her generous acts have inspired more good work than bad. Gabby trailed off, not meeting Kyle's eyes. Kyle hurried to the set. Ran out of time. Sitting across from his host chair. All right. Answer politely. And I as well, Rachel, answered Kyle, extending his hand in greeting. You are a most welcome guest. Shake hands. After other mild exchanges of pleasantries, Kyle and Rachel were prompted to take their places for the broadcast. A moment after seating, the studio lights brightened and the cameras clicked on. Start broadcast. Good evening, everyone, said Kyle, looking at the camera. Welcome back to Stay Up Late with Kyle, introduced Rachel. Tonight I have the pleasure of interviewing the lovely Rachel May, who needs no more introduction. Kyle motioned to Rachel, who smiled and waved at the camera. Hello, Kyle, she said. I'm glad to be here. In response, Kyle collapsed on the floor. What? From a combination of stressful preparation and not eating anything, Kyle has passed out.
Kyle didn't need anything.
What? Nobody in the studio quite knew what to do with him. They began to poke Kyle in the back to see if he moved. After a while, they ended the broadcast, shut off the lights, and went home. Kyle was left face first on the floor, starving himself. Wow.
You have to get dressed and eat something.
Really?
Eat Gabby you will not count as eating something.
Alright, I'm going to start as Santa Claus. Naughty, naughty. Naughty, naughty, naughty. Alright. Back to room.
So I'm marking down how many endings we find. So far we found 3 out of the 36. And it doesn't have the bag for the Santa one.
Kyle used his elbow to forcefully compress the bag's contents so it could fit more elves. After several shoves, the contents of the bag had compressed severely. Kyle continued to gather elves. Soon Kyle's bag was a solid mass of elf flesh. Cookies! 3 hours left. Make the cookies, man.
Make it fast.
Soon he had narrowed it down to 4 choices: dirt, silverware, sprinkles, or dead rats. Dead rats? No, sprinkles, man. What's wrong with you? Thank goodness you ate something. Alright. But of course we're going to dump elves on her, so. Before Rachel had completely finished her sentence, Kyle took his bag of elves and dumped them on her. The elves grabbed onto Rachel with a deathly, unshakable grip. Kyle, what on earth? Said Rachel. She bolted out of her chair and tried to bat the elves off of her. These, Rachel, said Kyle, are your newest and bestest friends. You must take good care of them. The elves looked Rachel in the eyes and smiled endearingly. Unknown to anyone previously, Rachel had terrible allergic reactions to elf dander. Within moments, Rachel's whole body turned bright red and began to puff. This reaction was not like a normal reaction. The very foundational composition of Rachel's person began to change. Rachel started to sprout limbs from her legs and forehead. Her fingers grew extra eyes. As Rachel began to mutate, it became obvious to the onlookers what was happening. Rachel was transforming into the pure embodiment of all of Christmas. Kyle realized that if he was going to keep his job as Santa, this would have to be nipped in the bud. Kyle started to pull elves off of the growing Rachel. Instead of slowing the growing process, this seemed to give Rachel's body more space to develop new limbs and ears. After pulling a few more elves, Kyle threw up his hands in frustration and gave up. He walked out of the building. Rachel continued to grow, becoming a shapeless mass of teeth, shoulder, and fat. The elves were slowly enveloped. After the initial shock wore off, the surrounding community began to appreciate Rachel's new form. Over the years, she became an icon of local Christmas celebration, acting as a centerpiece for decoration and celebrations. Rachel truly became the embodiment of Christmas. Kyle, still Santa, remained very jealous. Kyle started a tradition. Alright, let's see. Does being a ghost help you in any way?
It's pretty neat for some endings.
Let's see. If you're Santa and you don't make a list, but you probably got to get dressed and eat something, right?
Yeah. You don't need to make, if you don't make your list, but to get dressed and eat stuff.
So make some cookies. What happens if you go on Santa duties? Go on Santa duties, huh?
Okay.
Kyle realized it was wise to conduct his duties as Santa. Spread Christmas cheer. Kyle knew that one of his duties as Santa must be to spread Christmas cheer. Kyle skipped down the street merrily. As he met others walking along the sidewalk, he smiled. Surely they would feel Christmas cheer. After several streets, Kyle stopped skipping. Nobody had burst into Christmas song. Nobody had wished him a Merry Christmas. Nobody had even smiled. Kyle realized he would need to spread Christmas cheer more aggressively. Kyle walked up to a young couple, chatting and laughing amongst themselves. He grabbed the woman by the shoulders and shook her lightly. "Listen to me," he screamed. "It's Christmas time." The couple left quickly. Kyle, not dissuaded, ran into the street, stopping a car with his hands. "It's Christmas! Tell your family I love them!" Kyle shouted, banging his fist on the car hood. Wow. Kyle's methods still proved ineffective. He realized that if he were to be a proper Santa, he must not hold back. Kyle started slamming his forehead into the car hood repeatedly, flailing his arms in the air. "It is time for presents!" Kyle emphasized each word with a percussion from his face. Suddenly, Kyle was blessed with another Christmas miracle. Kyle's neck shot directly upwards, throwing his mouth towards the sky. Slowly, painfully, a live reindeer began to emerge from his throat. In fact, it was not one reindeer, it was several. Kyle began to run around, arms waving, desperately trying to find a way of dislodging the animals emerging from him. In a sudden, forceful moment, reindeer after reindeer explosively shot out of Kyle's mouth. The stream did not stop there. Every orifice of Kyle's face began shooting wrapped presents of all sizes in every direction. Kyle, unaware of what to do, spun in all circles and screamed. Like doves, the presents flew far into the air, landing into the laps of children of the world. Within a period of minutes, Kyle had managed to give the world his Santa-ly gifts. Eventually, the present spewing stopped. Kyle fell to the ground. He crawled his way back to his apartment and lay down. Kyle did not remember about his interview with Rachel. Kyle spread cheer. Okay, I didn't really want that to straight up end with some kind of weird reindeer throw up.
It did, too bad.
Oh my god. Okay. Don't make the list. Go to the kitchen. Make Christmas cookies. Okay, so spreading good cheer is a horrible idea. Give presents to children. Is this going to turn out horrible?
I don't know.
Kyle could think of nothing better than to gather children around him and give them presents. Kyle supposed it was possible there were children in nearby parks, so he quickly walked up.
He's gonna get arrested.
He's going to get arrested. Upon arriving, Kyle saw several families happily walking around and playing in the snow. Kyle called for the families to gather around him. The children bounced over expectantly. Kyle presented the children with a gift of nothing or wisdom. Nothing. Because Kyle had not bothered to actually bring anything to give the children, he had nothing to give them. "Sorry, kiddos," he said. "You're not getting any presents today." Kyle let out a long, meaningful laugh. The children were quite frustrated. With a cry of anguish, one child jumped at Kyle and started beating him with both fists. Then another joined him, then another. Are you going to beat up my kids? Soon, that sounds like my life. Soon Kyle was completely covered in violent, angry children. Kyle was mauled by the children and barely escaped with his life. As Kyle slid into his apartment, he locked the door and sank to the floor. He remembered that he had an interview with Rachel later, but he decided he didn't feel up to it. Kyle gifted nothing. Oh, okay.
There's several ones for the gifting. Blessing, lard, claymore, and wisdom. So I guess get the lard for your kitchen and try giving that to them.
Okay, but I gotta get dressed before I meet kids. And I gotta eat something, don't I? Oh, I can eat the lard.
No, give the lard to the kids.
Well, I gotta get the key, right?
I think it's just in your kitchen. Like in your pantry.
Check locked door.
I don't think there's anything in there.
I think that's it. Use Christmas magic. Walked to the strange door in the hallway, but found that the door was locked from the inside. Use Christmas magic. Kyle twiddled his fingers and sang a Christmas tune under his breath to open the door. The door swung open, letting Kyle through. Enter room. Kyle found himself in the room. He stashed the various items sent to him by his fans. Check sewing machine. Kyle walked over to the dilapidated sewing machine. Its box was only half removed. Interesting. What do you do with that?
I don't know yet. I guess it's useful for one ending, at least.
Yeah, because if I check the pantry, it's locked.
Oh yeah, you gotta get the key from somewhere.
We're wasting so much time. Oh, man. Okay.
Goodness.
Dang it, now I'm scavenging.
Why are you scavenging?
Kyle firmly pressed his ear into the carpet, hoping to hear some strange words from the neighbor below.
Look up how to get the key.
I heard Rachel May is going on a trip out of the country soon. Oh, girlfriend, tell me more. Well, what I will tell you is that every night I don a mask that looks like a bug and fight misdoers. There was a stunned silence. Then a door opened. Someone exited the neighbor's apartment. Huh?
It's in your desk drawer. I don't think you have enough time to actually get it now.
No.
You can get the key is there though.
At least I got the key. Okay, now I'm at the interview. Answer politely, shake hands.
Fall down. So you can gossip about the neighbor now.
Gossip about the neighbor. Good evening, everybody, said Kyle. My neighbor is a bug vigilante. With nothing more to say on the matter, he fell silent. Rachel, also on camera, stared at her hands and wondered when she was going to be introduced. The producer started cutting to different camera angles to break the tension. Kyle continued to remain silent and stared forward blankly. After several minutes, neighbor Gabby walked out onto the set. Hi, everyone, she said, smiling hollowly. My name is Gabby, and I'm not a bug vigilante.
How did they get here that fast?
Probably just staring silently for all that time. False. Kyle looked at Gabby and then returned to staring forwards. Gabby began to reply but was interrupted by a bug-shaped intercom on her belt. Bug girl, it squawked. A robbery is in progress on East 3rd. Report immediately. Gabby threw the intercom on the ground and crushed it under her foot. After a beat, she spoke again. Something has come up suddenly and I must go. Gabby left the set. Well, said Kyle, that's all the time we have for tonight. Thanks for joining us, Rachel. Rachel got up, shook Rachel's hand again, and walked past the cameras, leaving her alone. Not knowing what else to do, the producer ended the broadcast. In the coming days, fans of both Rachel and Kyle dubbed this show as a masterpiece of television. Stay Up Late with Kyle's online pages were updated to reflect this broadcast as most popular ever. Kyle's producer later tried to have Rachel on the show again, but she was very, very, very busy. Talked about Gabby.
She just doesn't want to go on the show again.
Okay, so. Alright. Get the suit on. Don't approach kids naked. Alright,
That should have been an ending. I don't know. They
sit at
an
desk.
ending where you approach kids naked and then people beat you.
Ugh.
Or you'll get arrested.
Okay, so we got the key. Back to room. Go to hallway. Kitchen?
Yeah, get them some lard. I don't want to know what happens if you try to give kids lard.
Chug it. Chug a bottle of lard or grab a bottle of lard. Ignore the pantry for now. Grab a bottle of lard. There we go. We got lard.
You can eat the fridge.
Turn the hallway. Already did.
You ate the entire fridge.
I don't know what that does though.
It gives you something to eat so you don't pass out.
I guess so. Alright, Santa duties. Give presents to children. Okay. Bottle of lard. This is going to end up being a mistake. Here, kids, said Kyle. Enjoy. Kyle produced a bottle of lard, snapped the neck off, and poured it all over the children and their parents. The group stood, shocked and confused. Kyle threw his arms out wide in celebration. Merry Christmas, he shouted. Kyle laughed from the bottom of his stomach. Suddenly, with a crack, all the children pointed at Kyle, mouths hanging open and with glowing red eyes. They began to walk towards Kyle together, continuing to point and murmuring softly.
What the hell?
Kyle suddenly realized he was in a sticky situation. Kyle turned to flee, but was stopped by an oncoming mob of children walking towards him from behind. Kyle did not know, but he had triggered an ancient evil that lay beneath his town.
Right,
Without-
lard on people?
I guess so. Without anywhere to turn, Kyle began to dig downwards with his hands. Impressively, Kyle managed to outrun the ancient evil around him and burrowed deep into the earth. Without many other options, Kyle stayed put and waited for the ancient evil to go away from the city. That time did not come. The ancient evil took over the populace of the town, turning Kyle's city into a mass of glowing eyes and danger. Many supernatural investigators tried to find the root of the city's problems, but failed. Okay. It was lard. Roads leading to the city were eventually blocked, leaving it as a banned, evil place surrounded by normal America. And they called this Resident Evil 10. Kyle expanded his underground home to be a series of tunnels running underneath the city. He survived by popping out into various buildings and swiping their leftover canned goods from pantries and shelves. Kyle had changed his city forever. Gifted lard.
I don't know how you're supposed to get Claymore or the blessing, but you still give them wisdom.
Give the kids wisdom.
Yeah.
Alright, so choose an outfit. Santa suit. Santa suit.
Eventually we need to figure out how to get a Claymore and a blessing to give them.
Make cookies with dead rats.
Oh yes.
Kyle placed one of the dead rats in his sink on his each cookie. They were very bad. Okay. Alright, let's go Santa duties, give presents to children. Wisdom. Children, it is time to listen to Santa, said Kyle. The children leaned in eagerly. I have lived a long and full life, said Kyle, and seen many things no man could imagine.
Like you're gonna die.
From the many experiences I've had and people I've met, I feel qualified to give you this piece of wisdom. Kyle coughed into his hand and took a deep breath. Don't feed your girlfriend sea monkeys on the first date. There may not be a second. The children stared at Kyle blankly. Uncomfortably, the group shuffled their feet in silence. After a moment, one of the parents spoke. Actually, yeah, I can back him up on this. Tried it with my first girl. She ended up gagging at the table. No, he's right. Us girls don't like that, said her mother. Remember when you tried that on me, Dale? Dale remembered and grinned. Yeah, but she's still stuck with... Yeah, but she's still stuck with me. Must have done something right. The group of parents laughed appreciatively and started swapping stories of their first dates. Kyle screamed and tore at his stomach. More elves were on their way out. In a sudden explosion, the group was covered in hungry, crawling elf flesh. The parents were whipped into a frenzy of pulling elves off of themselves and their children. Kyle, uncomfortable with the situation, decided to leave. On his way home, Kyle greeted everyone he passed. Inside his door, he stopped and smiled. He knew he had done something wonderful for the children in his community. Gifted wisdom.
Brilliant.
Dang, we almost got all the Santa ones.
Well, the Mother Elf one you didn't get yet.
How do you get that one?
Show up to the interview without your list and claim to be Santa.
That's it?
Yeah.
So show up to it as Santa
Without your list.
without your list. Gotta eat cookies though.
Yeah, make sure to eat it.
Make it with dirt. Kyle sprinkled a small amount of dirt on each cookie. They were iffy.
Okay, now you can pretty much do whatever for the rest of the time.
Basically, just go back and forth until it's time. Just keep walking back and forth. Is he gonna say anything on this?
The other ones, we need to release the elves, get enough fights, then gift a claymore and a blessing. So probably try and figure out where we can get the claymore from.
So you explain yourself that you're Santa?
Yeah. Produce the present.
Should we?
I think that's how you continue it.
Do you happen to have your naughty and nice list with you? Kyle realized he had not written his naughty and nice list. Trying to save face, Kyle retaliated. Well, a real Santa doesn't need a list because he has it all up here. Kyle tapped on his head a few times. Rachel was unconvinced. Kyle, one of Santa's only defining characteristics is having a naughty and nice list. Don't take it away from him. Kyle began to doubt if he had truly experienced a Christmas miracle or not. Rachel, he said, I have to be Santa. Why is that, Kyle? Rachel looked at him sweetly. Because earlier today I birthed thousands of elves from my very flesh, said Kyle. Here, I'll do it again. Kyle tried to produce more elves from his skin. What Kyle did not know is that he had not produced the elves from a Christmas miracle. In fact, Kyle had been infested by the mother elf who had laid her eggs in his stomach for incubation. Irritated by the commotion, the mother elf burst out of Kyle's mouth, screeching her war cry. Pandemonium ensued as the mother elf aggressively attacked all present. I think this is what Shippa desires when he thinks of elves. Rachel drew a blunt weapon from her pant leg and started to beat the elf monster senseless. Eventually, the mother elf had taken enough. With a parting screech, she scurried out of the studio to find a new host. Nobody quite knew what to do next, so nobody did anything. Eventually, Kyle addressed the audience. Everybody, he said, I don't think I'm Santa Claus. The producer shut the cameras off and everyone went home. Kyle continued the coming days as normal, but vetted his diet much more carefully. It was the mother elf.
So the endings, what endings do we have right now? Where's Christmas? What's that?
I don't know.
I think there was one if you have Rachel on the night. on the naughty list.
Except for Gabby. I don't want Gabby beating me up.
Just Rachel has to be on the naughty list for it to work.
Only Rachel?
At least Rachel. That's the only one they're checking for. You can choose whatever for the rest of them.
Alright. Let's go get something to eat. Make Christmas cookies. Silverware. Kyle placed one piece of silverware on each cookie. After attempting to eat the first 2 cookies, Kyle was unable to swallow from the metal stuck in his throat. Kyle clamps his throat with both hands and squeezed, popping the silverware out of his mouth. I feel like I better make something. Eat crust on fridge wall.
The fridge.
Kyle started scraping the streaks of crud and spots of black mold off of the walls in his fridge. After balling up the filth from the sides of fridge, Kyle bit into the crusty, moist ball. Several minutes of chewing later, Kyle finished chewing and swallowed the ball whole. Okay then. So explain that you're Santa?
It's the same thing as before. When she asked about it, she's gonna get upset that she's on the naughty list.
You don't rank well. Rachel was visibly taken aback. Oh? Said Rachel. Why is that, Kyle? 'Cause you suck. Kyle made no attempt to try to frame his comment as a joke. He stared at Rachel expressionlessly. Well, Kyle, said Rachel, being that I am Santa Claus, I'm not sure you have the authority to say that. Rachel pulled out her own naughty and nice list out of her pocket. Kyle's blood ran cold. And you, Kyle, said Rachel, are getting awfully close to switching to the naughty list. She hovered a pin menacingly. No, Rachel, no, said Kyle. Don't do that. Rachel held her mouth open in a maniacal smile and drew the pin slightly closer to her list. Kyle dived across the stage, nabbing at Rachel's hands to try to steal away either the list or her pin. A fist fight between the two ensued. Blows were given to the face of each with equal gusto. After several minutes of being slightly amused, the producer thought it may be better to end the broadcast. As the lights shut off and the studio closed, Kyle and Rachel were still locked in combat, neither backing down. Who the true Santa between the two was never figured out. But indeed, that night the true Santa was involved in a fist fight and did not deliver any presents. It was the worst Christmas ever. Kyle got in a fight.
Yep. Because that was the worst Christmas one.
Guess so.
There's 3 left. Release the elves, get the claymore, and get the blessing. So I'm looking at someone who's got the claymore, and I guess it's an unlockable. You have to use more endings to get it. So let's switch over to the regular endings, and I guess we can see it later.
Yeah, there's a lot of normal endings we don't have.
Let's go do the normal endings, and then come back and see if it appears. I think you probably should try and get a phone.
How do you get a phone?
If you go and break a phone at the tech area, you keep it for the rest of the game. So I guess go steal Techno Gym while you're at it.
But we do have to eat.
Make sure to eat.
Kyle constructed a breakfast of poached eggs and toast, along with a small fruit cup and grilled sausage. Eat it. Kyle ate his breakfast slowly and thoughtfully, enjoying every bite. He felt refreshed. Okay, so let's leave the apartment, go to the tech store. Kyle asked the store attendant whether or not they offered any free samples to important customers. The attendant gave Kyle a confused and slightly vacant look. Kyle began to beg for a free sample. Wanting Kyle to leave, the attendant grabbed a decrepit phone meant for spare parts and held it out to him. Grab with teeth or grab with hand? Grab with teeth. Kyle firmly clamped his mouth around the outstretched phone, creating several teeth holes in the screen. Kyle grunted and yanked with his head until the attendant let go of the phone. The phone will use forever. Okay. Give review a free sample. This phone, said Kyle, is several years old and has exposed wires coming out of the back. Kyle continued, the phone also has had screen issues after I used it to hammer nails into the wall for a painting. Furthermore, when I submerge it in water, I get severely shocked until it runs out of battery. The attendant looked at Kyle, pursed his lips, and said nothing. Feeling he had made his argument, Kyle decided to leave.
Okay.
Wow, okay. Well, let's waste some time at Gabby's.
I guess you want to go steal Techno Gem?
Oh, we wanted to go see it?
It's part of the ending that we could go for. Well, now you have the phone at least. And we can find another ending.
What do I do with this phone?
Yeah, I don't know. This is your option in the morning.
In a shock, Kyle realized he had never bothered to prepare any notes for the interview. Blame Rachel for lack of notes, run away, or play dead. Blame Rachel for lack of notes. Rachel, I need to be honest. You're not terribly interesting, and I could not think of what I should ask you. In fact, continued Kyle, I would far rather interview a fish than I would you. And furthermore, said Kyle, I'm not sure I could tell the difference between you and a fish. Kyle leaned back in his chair and desperately hoped the blame had been shifted adequately. Rachel glowered at Kyle. Kyle glowered back. Rachel left the studio. Kyle no longer had a guest and spent the next 42 minutes staring at the camera silently. Kyle prepared by blaming others.
And now you have a phone every time you start.
Wow, it's permanent?
Yeah, that's permanent. That's why I was saying get the phone.
Wow. So what's Techno Gem do?
Techno Gym is a cardboard cutout.
What's that lead to, though?
You want to interview a cardboard cutout?
Right, that sounds fun. Let's go do that. Alright, so move the kitchen, open fridge, eat condiments, huh? Kyle started to grab condiments from the fridge, squirting them into his mouth with both hands. The rate at which ketchup, soy sauce, and other items entered Kyle's mouth soon eroded his ability to swallow. Kyle spewed the excess condiments across the kitchen, covering the furniture and walls. But I have a check mark on food, though. Kyle continued until all the condiments had been emptied. That's disturbing. Alright, leave apartment, go to the tech store, steal Techno Gem. Continue with the day. Turn to apartment. But I probably should make notes for the interview, right?
You have Techno Gym now. You can make them if you want.
Interview Techno Gem instead. Kyle roughly shoved Rachel out of her seat and placed Techno Gem in her stead. Hello, Techno Gem, said Kyle. I'm going to interview you today. Kyle grasped Techno Jim's hand and tried to shake it, but instead tore it off the cardboard frame. Kyle's producer, sensing viral media, pulled the bewildered Rachel out of frame and motioned to the crew to go live. Cameraman moved, lights flashed, and suddenly the studio was on air. "Hi, I'm Kyle," said Kyle, "and tonight I'm going to interview a very special guest." He pointed at Techno Jim using the dismembered arm. Techno Jim started to smoke from the heat of the lights. "Would you like to introduce yourself?" asked Kyle. Knowing Jim would probably not speak, Kyle took it upon himself to be his voice as well. "Hi, Kyle," he said, raising the pitch of his voice. "My name is Rachel May, and I'm a very special guest." Rachel's expression of confusion turned to shock. "Well, Rachel, you look way too thin and absolutely terrible, and you should feel ugly." Kyle gave Jim a meaningful stare. "Wow, Kyle," he said, "I sure wish I could look like you." Techno Jim burst into flames. Instantaneously, the sprinkler system initiated. Curtains of water poured down from the rafters. Within seconds, the production equipment was doused in water. The set was soon abuzz with electrical fires. Kyle's crew abandoned their post as cameramen and sound mixers to try to put the fires out. As the crew scrambled around, the cameras continued to run. Kyle sat motionless, staring forward. Eventually, the fires were all put out. Kyle's producer shut off the broadcast, leaving Kyle's vacant stare as the final frame. Kyle's ratings skyrocketed. Techno Jim became a staple on the show, often ending up destroyed by the end of each episode. Although Rachel did not come back on the show, her cardboard portrayal did. Rachel was very popular. Rachel in quotation marks. Browse social media. Kyle started to scroll through news articles on his phone. Read article. Stay up late with Kyle's ranked #1 and #2 show on television. New East Bridge being constructed after being found to not actually exist. Authorities investigating. Okay. Another grand larceny and crime spree streak. Evidence points to perpetrator fleeing the country. Rachel made to unexpectedly leave the country on a very, very, very long vacation after the interview tonight. Who is the bug vigilante recently spotted pursuing larcenists? Kyle fails to show up to several charity events. Bug vigilante shows up to charity events with fresh baked pastries. Donations flourish. Hot dogs making resurgence as fuel source for both humans and tugboats. Phone model recalled. Techno Jim stores blamed overuse by customers. Kyle's phone exploded in his hand from overuse. What was that about?
I was telling you to get off your phone. Okay, so it seems like there's one that makes sense that you can just do a normal interview with Rachel. There's ones that are you just find the grossest thing you can and eat it on screen. Yes, several endings are you just find the grossest thing you can. Then there's two that you don't bring any notes to the interview and you go different routes to try to avoid consequences. There's some that seem really difficult to get because I'm not sure by their names. So I'd have to walk you through how to get those unless we actually find them normally. And it looks like there's one where you give yourself amnesia.
Kyle vomited all the horrible things he had eaten earlier on the floor. Rachel looked at Kyle, concerned, gave a couple coughs, and decided to play it cool and keep the show running. Kyle stopped, then vomited again, then continued with a shaky voice. Tonight I have the pleasure of interviewing the lovely Rachel May, who needs no more introduction. Kyle motioned to Rachel, who smiled and waved at the camera. "Hello, Kyle," she said. "I'm glad to be here." "All right." "I'm very ready," said Rachel with a winning smile. Kyle produced the notes he had taken earlier. "Am I a mother?" "Rachel, am I a mother?" Kyle looked at her very seriously. Rachel was visibly very unsure of how to respond. "Well, Kyle, I think you might be a better source of answering that question than I am." "But do you think I'm a mother?" asked Kyle, pushing further. Rachel paused for a second before answering. "I think you inspire youth to pursue STEM fields," she answered. Kyle asked another question. I ran over a puppy on purpose," said Kyle. Everyone in studio froze. Kyle spread his hands out wide. "It's a joke!" He started laughing from the bottom of his stomach. Nobody laughed with Kyle. Several minutes later, he stopped laughing and moved on. "Rachel, are you guilty?" Kyle threw his questions on the floor, stood up, and pointed at her. Rachel's eye twitched slightly. "Guilty of what, dear Kyle?" She smiled disingenuously. "Guilty," spat Kyle, "of your crimes." Rachel did not answer. Elizabeth started twitching uncontrollably. "Call police." Kyle pulled out his phone and dialed the police. "Hello, police," said Kyle. "I believe I have found a criminal." Rachel began to run towards the exit. On her way, she swatted Kyle's phone out of his hand. "Tripper." Kyle stuck out his leg. Rachel stumbled and crashed to the floor, but in a moment she was on her feet. She drew a blunt weapon seemingly out of thin air and started to swing at Kyle. Before Kyle had a chance to react, a figure burst through the roof and blocked Rachel's attack. It was a middle-aged woman in a bug-shaped mask. She was brandishing a bug-shaped stick. The woman began the fight with Rachel, flicking her weapon back and forth with surprising speed. Rachel tried to fight back, but it was obvious she was no match for the interceptor. With one quick move, the bug vigilante drew her foot high above her head and drove it straight onto Rachel's hand. The woman's weapon clattered to the floor. Rachel attempted to run again, but was met with a stick to her legs. She fell at the feet of a police officer just arriving from Kyle's call. Rachel was charged with 7 cases of grand larceny. After her first month in jail, Rachel started a reality TV show filmed in her cell about prison cooking. The show gained immense popularity, and somehow the public began to love Rachel all the more. Kyle made guest appearances on Rachel's show many times. The identity of the bug vigilante was never known. She remained a mysterious but important part of local law enforcement. Rachel started a new show. Okay.
Good job.
So I should never do this, right? Browse social media.
It doesn't really do anything. The phone's just there so you can call the police.
I thought it was broken.
I thought so too, but I guess you fixed it. In 0 hours.
What's skunk pasties?
You don't know what a pasty is?
No.
It's things strippers stick to their nipples.
Oh. Okay. I guess we'll dress as that. I gotta come up with the questions. Are you a mother? Beef, mashed, or blended? What's your guilty pleasure? Okay. So let's go to hallway, kitchen, open fridge, eat condiments. Do you ever smile? Like, seriously? Kyle spat his question out viciously. Rachel, stop smiling. If you're going to be on the show, you need to smile, okay? Says Kyle, not smiling. You're here to get views, and you'll get more views if you smile. Here, I'll show you how. Kyle turned to the camera and gave the audience a huge, teeth-clenched, bug-eyed grimace. Rachel nodded and obviously wanted to move on. Beef, mashed, or blended? A burning question from the fans, said Kyle. Beef. Do you prefer it mashed or blended? Rachel answered quickly and honestly. Mashed. And no more was said on the matter. Are you a mother? Rachel and I and many others would love to know. Are you a mother? Kyle looked up from his notes. Well, being a single woman with a career, she answered, that's not something that has crossed my mind. Rachel smiled genuinely at Kyle. Very reasonable indeed, said Kyle. He referenced his papers of questions. We all have one. What's your guilty pleasure? Ooh, well, that's an easy answer, said Rachel. Dipping pickles in chocolate sauce. It might sound strange, but it's tangy and sweet at the same time. I eat it far too often, Rachel smiled sweetly. After reading his final question, Kyle looked up from his paper. Well, Rachel, he said, I think that's all I was planning on asking you. If that's the case, Kyle, may I ask you something in return? Asked Rachel, smiling one more time. What on earth are you wearing? Are they made of skunks? Before Kyle could answer, the camera shut down and the broadcast was over. Kyle returned home knowing the interview had gone well. But as he lay in bed and drifted to sleep, he felt that perhaps something was still missing. Very well. Well, that wasn't bad.
That's like the regular one. Okay, which one? Collect the flashlight and spare change from the desk drawer.
Gotta get dressed though, right?
I don't think so. Just wander around naked for this one, I guess. I don't know how long it's gonna take.
Grabbed the flashlight, but after jiggling the switch, he found out it was about out of batteries. Alright, so check back. Sort of change. Alright.
Okay, now go to the tech shop and buy batteries.
Buy batteries with change. Kyle counted out $1.98 in pennies and nickels and traded them for a small packet of batteries.
Steel Techno Gym.
Alright.
Okay, so you need to go inspect your closet with the flashlight.
Inspect with flashlight. Kyle shined his flashlight into his moist cave-like closet that had not been seen light in years. After several minutes of searching around with the light, Kyle saw something unusual in the back. A small metal box with a large red button sat in the back, stamped with a travel time label.
Upgrade with Techno Gym.
Use Techno Gym to upgrade. Kyle pulled out the electronics from Techno Gym's eyes and fingers and started shoving them into the box. The box began to rattle, imbued with the power of the important technology found on Techno Gym. Suddenly, with a pop and a fizz, Kyle found himself taken back to 19th century Europe. Kyle was riding inside of a horse-drawn carriage. He was surrounded by poofy dresses and shocked faces. Every face was stone cold, made of copper and definitely a robot. Kyle had found himself in Robo-Europe. The gathered Robo-denizens' heads started spinning and shooting out alarm lasers from their mouths and ears. Kyle reacted very quickly.
You're already there, so you can choose whichever one you want.
By consuming the lasers for power, by firing lasers from his mouth, by giving up and dying. Consume it, I guess. Kyle quickly started to consume all of the lasers. Every laser he swallowed gave him more power. Soon Kyle bloated up and just kind of fart exploded, lasers all over the place. The force of the explosion pushed all beings, metal and not, out of the carriage with great velocity. Kyle landed in a nearby field on his head and immediately lost consciousness. While Kyle was asleep, the robot citizens plugged his body into a generator linked to their main power grid. Having energy sucked from his body kept Kyle in a pseudo-cryogenic state, keeping him unconscious and preserved. Robo-scientists began to use Kyle's energy production as a center of study, launching the robot world into a golden age. Kyle started to power all of the technological advancements of the robot world. Wars began to center around control of Kyle. Kyle was deemed as the most important discovery of the modern robo world. After humans took over the ancient robot civilizations, Kyle was mummified by the ancient Egyptians. Kyle was stolen from a museum in the early 1800s. He was attempted to be smuggled across the Atlantic but sank. Scientists uncovered him encased in ice in the Antarctic and shipped him by helicopter for study. On the way, Kyle was accidentally shoved out of the helicopter. He crash-landed through the roof into the bed in his apartment. After several days of lying unconscious in bed, Kyle began to stir. What? Ended up in bed.
Now for another time trial one, you do the same thing, but this time instead of doing techno gym, wear clothes and take the box.
Alright, so sit at desk, check drawer, get flashlight. Get change.
So buy batteries. Put some clothes on. I like how no one cares if you just walk around naked.
So put clothes on?
Yeah, make sure to put clothes on. Okay, now do the same thing. Except for this time you want to take the box.
Travel time?
Take the box.
Alright.
And now just kill time.
Time travel with Rachel. Good evening, everyone, said Kyle. Tonight, Rachel and I will time travel together. In one motion, Kyle grabbed Rachel's arm and pressed the red button on the time machine with his elbow. Kyle and Rachel were sent back to a time before human existence on Earth. They were standing next to a large lake. There was a forest behind them full of singing birds. Lizards were everywhere. Kyle, dear, said Rachel, stern but not angry, you can't just do things like that. Rachel began digging in the dirt, looking for small, smooth stones. I'm sorry, Rachel, said Kyle. I got a bit ahead of myself. Kyle began helping to look for stones. Well, it's okay, Kyle. I forgive you. Rachel took Kyle's stones and started to build a small stack on the ground. Kyle silently began sifting through the sand to find pure mud. Well, since we're here together, said Rachel, using nearby sticks to build a pyramid around the rocks, how are you? Oh, I'm fine, said Kyle, sticking pieces of shale together with the mud. I've been preparing for your interview all day. Rachel began to bundle nearby foliage into small power cells. Do you love being famous? She asked. Kyle used bones from the dead fish ashore to start crafting some energy capacitors. That's an interesting question, Rachel, he answered. There's ups and downs. How about yourself? I think I'd love to be unknown with a loving family, said Rachel. Being so recognizable gets very lonely. Rachel starts grabbing live birds as they flew by to make a nuclear reactor. I understand that incredibly well, said Kyle, extracting pure hydrogen from the lake using a reed siphon. There was a warm understanding silence between them. After a few minutes, Kyle broke the silence. Can you pass me the arc welder when you're done? I need to weld these bioreactive plates together. Soon the pair had constructed a janky but workable return time machine. As they climbed in, Rachel and Kyle looked at each other. Both knew they had bonded. With the flick of a switch, the whir of an engine made out of beaver pelt and some pops, the duo returned home. Later that evening, back at his apartment, Kyle thought about the time he had spent with Rachel. He was glad they had gotten the chance to take a trip together. Kyle and Rachel took a trip.
That was a weird one. Okay, for the next weird one, you need to wither away. Flip through the locked door. There should be a supernatural artifact. You need to smash it.
So I wither away first.
You're now a ghost. Now find a locked door and go through it. I think it's in your kitchen.
Flow through his ghost. Kyle used his ghostly powers to walk straight through the door. Get laser claymore.
Oh, that's where the claymore is. Supernatural artifacts. Destroy it.
This is one of the many mysterious artifacts Kyle has been sent over the years. Smash it?
Smash it.
Kyle began pounding the mysterious artifact with both fists. Within a few hours, it's become dust. An ancient force trapped in the artifact is released and turned Kyle into a lizard demon.
It doesn't say anything else, so I guess just kill time.
So I gotta get dressed. Float through side door.
Huh. Why not?
Kyle found himself in the room. He's stashed the various items.
That's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
For the second version of this, you throw it at Rachel. So it's the same thing, just next time throw it. Grab the artifact and throw it at Rachel.
Okay.
You gotta feel sorry for Rachel. He keeps just doing random shit with her. Like, he either doesn't pay attention to her at all, or he gets arrested.
Rachel's smile turned to horror as she realized she was looking not at a human, but a lizard demon. Pandemonium ensued. Scripts went flying. Crew members ran in all directions. Lights were knocked over. As Kyle watched the chaos around him, his lizard demon form enveloped his last shred of humanity. Kyle grew to a massive size. Within several minutes, he had demolished the now empty set. A local force of 5 spunky teenagers in brightly colored apparel arrived at the scene to fight Kyle. As the teenagers swung at him with their spunky, individualized weapons, Kyle pushed them over with his foot. Kyle's rampage of a studio. Ruins continued, but in another part of the city, a hero was rising up. In a dusty apartment on the top floor of an old skyscraper in the oldest part of town, sat a large man named Frank. Few people in the world knew that Frank existed. Fewer knew his name. Frank was watching the local news. A story about the studio rampage was playing. Quickly, Frank got up from his chair. He opened a small door hidden behind a poster on his wall. Inside was an unbelievable mound of fat-ridden foods, unrefrigerated and fairly rotten. Frank began to consume the mound at a frightening rate. His body began to puff. Frank expanded, faster and faster with each minute. He burst through the roof. Within minutes, Frank was a towering behemoth. He rolled across the city, rebounding off of buildings and getting cheers from onlookers below. Approaching Kyle, Frank gave a long, painful heave upwards into the sky. To Kyle, the sky turned black. He looked upwards to see the monstrous figure hurtling towards him. And in a moment, Kyle was completely enveloped in rubbery fat, unable to move or make noise. Frank was quite tired and passed out where he lay. Several years went by as Frank slumbered. As Kyle was held in Frank's warm, fatty embrace, his humanity began to return. When the first winter came, Frank's body recycled his fat for resources. Over many silent months, he shrank in size. Eventually, Kyle was human and Frank was thinned. They both walked away from the scene as new men. Neither realized how much time had passed. What?